Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GrokTALK.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GrokTALK, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. Welcome to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and Grok Media LLC. This week you get me. Yes, no guests, just the pasty white, unshaven version of me. And whatever it is I can think of to say. And I've got a few things I want to say. I want to start with this. The Maggie Goodlander controversy. Maggie Goodlander is a carpetbagger. Nobody doubts this at all. And nobody seems to care, certainly not in Congressional District 2, where she was elected to Congress. Yes, her and her husband are very wealthy, and they live in a beautiful house in Portsmouth. Yes, she rented an apartment in Nashua that she never lived in, but that they both voted from. There's a lot of noise about that right now in the media, local media, and it's basically a waste of time. I mean, it's not because you need stuff to talk about, and it is interesting, and it does frame her character, but we're talking about Congressional District 2. Nobody cares. The sort of people that you want to come out and vote to defeat a Democrat candidate in that district are going to turn out for issues other than whether or not she's a carpetbagger living in Portsmouth and voting from Nashua. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to get past that because CD2 is blue. It's got a lot of blue cities in it. You need turnout to beat her. You need massive turnout to beat her. And you're going to get those people to turn out on more important issues than whether or not she lives in Nashua or Portsmouth. Okay, enough of that. So, there's been a lot of talk about things like, well, that subject, people in the middle, how do we appeal to them? How do we not make them kind of creep off to the edges of the radical right or left? There's a lot of talk about woke right in the news, which is something that we'll get to in a little bit. I have a clip from the Jordan Peterson show. So I wrote something that I'm going to publish on Substack. And because it's so much fun to watch somebody read stuff on a podcast, I'm going to do that. So here we go. It's called When You Have Something to Say, Silence is a Lie. And again, this will publish tomorrow on my Substack and then probably later on GrokTALK, so I can share it in places that I can't share from my Substack. Take a deep breath. There are moments from the past when I can recall being told not to lump all the Democrats into one donkey cart full of crazy. They can't all be like those wingnut lefties who defend criminal aliens or Tesla vandals or almost peaceful protests. Most of them are probably not gender-confused groomers or anti-white advocates for criminal aliens, but they vote for people who are. They are not Hannah Dugan, aiding and abetting crimes against the Republic, nor are they fomenting the socialist advance of Marxists bent on replacing free markets with central planners, free speech with thought control, and prosperity and opportunity with dependence and compliance. But they vote for people who are and do. They are people, many of whom just want to be left alone, but are not uncomfortable with the government doing things that real nonprofits used to do. Functions that were handled by churches, Good Samaritans, and supported by private businesses. That is the crux of the issue, and many of them probably feel like those moderate Muslims we hear about, people who are not radicals, decent and polite, content to live a life left alone or indifferent to what happens around them, but who perhaps enable that which will deny them peace by not standing up for the right to be left alone. Unintentional servants whose silence fuels that seemingly inevitable freight train of radical tyranny. Not all of them, and increasingly fewer of them, but to paraphrase Dr. Jordan Peterson, when you have something to say, silence is a lie. And no, he's not suggesting you blurt out every thought you have or may have in your head, but when you suspect something about how the government or elected officials are spending your money and you don't speak or act, they take that as affirmation. Your vote and your silence are both a mandate. Peterson is famous because he saw the immediate and lasting danger of a law that would compel speech and opposed it at great peril to himself and his family. A stand whose supporters were mostly American, not even from his native Canada. And it was a hill he defended with all his intellectual might, to the benefit of everyone. Compelled speech is nothing short of mind control, and the attention he brought to it caused him great pain over many years, which inevitably yielded massive global success. He wasn't after success, nor was he particularly political at that point. If anything, he was center-left. He had a career, a thriving practice, his own research lab, all of which he sacrificed so that the government could not compel his speech. No one else can be Jordan Peterson. So the rest of us might be afraid to speak up or lack the words, knowledge, or skills to properly defend any principles or issues. No one could blame them, not the least because the radical left long ago mastered the game of conversational whack-a-mole. Mr. Alinsky taught them well. Freeze a target, isolate them, ridicule them, make an example of them, and anyone who fails to learn the lesson. It is the same as the legislation to compel speech in Canada, an operant condition under which you are intimidated systematically into overthinking what you might say until you stop speaking. Not because you have nothing to say or lack the skill, but out of fear you'll misspeak. This creates a silence if the left fills, free from competition or challenge. We see some of this from people who claim to be on the right but are ideologically disposed towards other forms of tyranny. Anarchy is attributed to the right, but is incompatible with human nature and will inevitably lead to mob rule, oligarchy, and despotism. Nazism is a shade of Marxism. Communism is Marxism in practice. They all rely on power and police states to maintain an order intolerant of opposing parties or thoughts. They compel speech by pre-suppressing it, a marker that should define all such efforts as projects of the political left. The opposite end of this is maximal individual liberty reined in gently by limited government, the classic liberalism of our founders. This is the best possible place to be left alone, with some expectations that mechanisms are in place to protect you from thugs and villains and stupid people who make dangerous mistakes, especially those attracted to every level of government. But that utopia requires more work from everyone. You cannot offshore your morality or responsibility to someone else's wallet. In this model, there is no government-sanctioned weaponization of empathy where adherents can claim a monopoly on morality from which others will be made to pay. Neither the state nor the representatives you elect to serve erect institutions at great and continual expense to perpetuate that false morality. We, the people, have to take up those causes ourselves, and perhaps there is no longer the will for that. But the alternative, as our history shows us, is a disaster for society, culture, prosperity among the masses, free speech, choice, and individual rights. What does all of that mean in this context? We need to continue to educate those people in the middle, in the gray area, in the ideological fringe near the center, about at least two things. First, explain why the Trump administration and Republicans need to work harder to dismantle the federal system brick by brick. No one else will do it. And while plenty of Republicans will balk, no Democrat is ever going to sanctify the devolution of the centralization of the state. Activity that, if needed at all, belongs at the state, county, or town level where they can be managed or replaced by something else based on local priorities. Second, if what you want is to be left alone and to pay fewer taxes or to have more say in how your money is spent when there is no other alternative, understand that this is impossible if you do not embrace the first thing and hold those people, regardless of party, accountable. Liberty, property rights, free markets, limited government, the value of American culture, it can and will be messy, and there are no guarantees except that if you don't do it, the government will clamor to take it from you. Mess it up, make it more expensive, less efficient, hide the truth, and then try to silence you if you want to point any of that out. If you do not step up to protect it, they will try to take it from you, your children, or your grandchildren. Take what? Everything, starting with those things enumerated in the Bill of Rights. All of it. Everyone, especially in the middle, must understand this in their bones. There is no version of the state besides the more limited one that will not eventually overreach, and that one requires our constant attention. Thanks to the recent years of COVID-era calamity, it's gotten as easy as it ever may be to prove that. It is therefore our job to persistently invite the middle into that debate, to honor their interest, to be patient as they learn, to listen and remind them that what the political right should be is the guardians of the flame of liberty, caretakers of an American experiment that has allowed more people to know liberty while lifting more of them out of poverty than any other. The government will never stop trying to grow, and as Skip likes to say, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. We are on the cusp of something potentially amazing, and Mr. Trump and his disruptors, the revolutionaries you elected in November of 2024, need our help. Few closing thoughts. Everything Donald Trump's administration is attempting to undo at the federal level, to the hysterics of many, either already has a footprint at the state or local level, or could if states wanted it. There is no reason for the feds to be doing it or robbing citizens to fund it, especially if they do not need or want it. Do not ever believe the government cares about you or will care for you. Individuals within it may, but they answer to a thing that has no interest in transparency, accountability, or responsibility, that exists to protect its own interests, even when it is established, as ours was, to protect ours. The government will use any tool you give it, or, through indifference, see for itself, and then do anything to prevent you from taking it back. The state that does not exist to protect your natural rights has only one other use for you, as a human battery, to power its matrix. I don't know, was that profound? Anyway, the idea here is that the people in the middle are the people that we're supposed to be appealing to, and we're supposed to do it in a manner in which we do not drive them to the far fringes of the left and right, radicalizing them in the process. Part of that discussion dovetails with the discussion about the woke right, which of course Konstantin Kisin has talked about. Talked about at length and taken a lot of heat over. He isn't exactly he's not a right-wing person by any stretch, but he's certainly a really smart guy. He's funny, and he has a lot of ideas that are worth listening to, so I do spend time trying to grasp some of the concepts that he's talking about. But I consistently fail to find real meat on the bones of this woke right problem, so I keep looking. I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. And a recent segment on Jordan B. Peterson's podcast, in which he had Dr. Lindsay and Dr. James Lindsay, they have a conversation about this. And while through most of this entire podcast, which is about an hour and a half on the free side, I wasn't really sure what the hell they were talking about. But the gist of it appears to be that there are pockets that are claiming to be on the right that are embracing concepts that are pre-totalitarian, neo-totalitarian, Hitlerian. They're sort of feeding the anti-Semitism that you see that has grown quite a bit, and I see it on the right, and that's dangerous. And I think I'm going to play this clip in a second and let you have a look at this particular section. And I recommend the podcast. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on Daily Wire. And it is worth listening to because there's a lot of great conversations about human nature and politics, and so it's always worth your time. But I'm going to play this clip, and then I'm going to come back and give you a really short version of what I think we need to do to prevent this from being a problem. So this is a precursor to that conversation on the woke right.
Whatsoever, forever, fundamentally.
Yeah.
I guess it's exposing this and hoping that people make wise decisions. You know, and I guess that's what you're trying to do with the woke right idea.
Yes, yeah. There are workable activities that could step into play. For example, you know, a lot of times you'll hear, especially libertarians, talk about the revision to the Smith-Mundt Act in 2012, and now our intelligence communities, we know that our social media is awash with propaganda. Well, there are legal constraints that you can put at least on your own government to prevent that. You can take, if you want to have a task force for doing something in terms of, say, national cybersecurity, keeping Russian and Iranian and Qatari Chinese bots and bad actors, Pakistani, these are where a lot of these bot networks are coming from. Keeping those influence campaigns, foreign influence campaigns out with a dedicated cybersecurity project is going to clean up a lot of it.
You think the administrators can stay ahead of the bots?
I don't think so. Actually, so far, not yet. I don't know.
Well, no, that's, I mean, that's another problem, right? Is that the system transforms itself so rapidly that it's very difficult to regulate it.
What I'm thinking is, you know, Trump created a space force because of maybe space war or whatever it's supposed to do, and I'm not quite sure. But this is like, I don't want to make it a branch of the military, but I'm using it as an analogy.
I don't know. Maybe it should be a branch of the military.
The cyber security or cyber warfare division, an entire branch that is dedicated to that, because this is a serious problem for, and again, the bigger the country, the more power it wields, the more likely it is to be attacked. Not to be rude to people from Botswana, but there's just not that much incentive to go mess around with their internet. There's a ton of incentive to mess with MAGA, which is informing Trump.
Well, we've already tracked too, some of the groups that I'm working with. Women 18 to 34 have political opinions that are way off center compared to everyone else. Plus, they're dreadfully miserable.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they get 80% of their news from TikTok, and TikTok is a bot farm fundamentally.
Yeah.
And the algorithms are designed to produce exactly the kind of upsetting pathology that characterizes female voters between the ages of 18 to 34.
Well, I mean, this is why woke is so female coded. Everybody kind of wonders, what in the world is critical race theory? Why is it so female coded? It's because every bit of what we call woke on the left passed through feminism to mainstream.
Yeah.
So it was all built off of pathological women trying to figure out how to pathologize young women to join their club or cult, really.
Sure.
And so it all ended up getting twisted. If you look at communism,
that's part of that oppressor-oppressed narrative.
Soviet communism was not a feminine endeavor, right? Brutal gun shooting, the whole thing. And there's a lot of things you could say about the snitch culture and all of this, but it's not like what we have now. But the reason is because the ideology passed in order to become viable in our society, to find the receptor sites. The receptor sites for Marxism in the West were overwhelmingly young white women. And it had to pass through feminism to be able to get the parasite to attach as a mind virus in order to get there, because that's what it was designed to do. On the other hand, therefore, you have young men who've been ravaged. Literally, Dave Rubin and I were talking the other day, and he said that you, as an individual, have done more than, and I believe him, more than any individual on the planet Earth to help young men who've had a hard time through all of this nonsense for the last 20 to 30 years, being a voice in the wilderness to reach and help and guide them and get them to, clean their room and all of the stuff,
And to identify the parasitic predators and keep them at bay.
So what we have now is we had a vulnerability complex that attached to young girls. Now we have another one that's rising in answer that's attaching to young men. So the tragedy for me, and I'm watching this, and I get, I'm integrated with the moms networks of the grassroots moms all over the country, right? And of course, these demons have come up with all kinds of salacious rumors to spread with regard to that, to discredit me and to remove me from their activity, which are all nonsense. But at any rate, what I'm watching is all these moms, I'm hearing from these moms already, who are telling me, they aren't using this phrasing, this is my phrasing, that they by the grace of God, their daughters didn't get pulled into the trans destruction mania, and now they're having to watch their sons get lured into Nazism. And that's why I'm so worked up about this woke right cult of transgression. I get it. You're a 15-year-old boy, maybe you're a 19-year-old boy, or 25-year-old, maybe you're a 35-year-old who hasn't grown up and got out of his parents' basement, and you think it's funny to post a mustache man meme or two here and there to rile up the libs and the normal people in the left and everybody else.
Plus, you're irritated that your identity has been targeted for 30 years.
Yeah, of course.
On racial grounds, right?
Just like the way the Germans felt with the imposition of the Treaty of Versailles, if they saw it that way, whether we do or not, how the Germans felt about the French and broader Europe and the rest of their standing in the world.
Yeah.
And they were impoverished and they were broken down. It's the same powder keg. Or maybe that's not the right word. It's more like a tank of propane, because you're going to pump it up and get it to spray fire when it comes out the other end, right? It's like more like
one of the things people can watch, for everybody who's watching and listening, is beware of anything that's motivated by resentment. You know, the mere fact that you have had difficulties that are somewhat arbitrary, first of all, doesn't distinguish you from the main run of the human race. But if the motivation stems out of resentment, the probability that something horrible has got a hold of your soul is extremely high.
So I go back to the first thing I said, right? What's woke right? Well, it's woke people who act like, or who call themselves conservatives. It's woke people who call themselves conservatives or right wing, right? So there it is. You just said it. They are people who feel alienated and dispossessed from their heritage, victimized. They're filled with resentment, and they channel it through left wing or right wing causes.
Yeah.
GrokTALK. So there's a lot to unpack in that, and we could talk about any or all of it, but I kind of want to stay on topic. So he basically clearly says what the problem is. So when you're talking about the politics, and I've been doing this for a really long time, and I'll tell you a story. I was at an event with Skip and Bill O'Brien and a whole bunch of other people at the Londonderry Fish and Game Club, and Bill O'Brien made this passing remark. Perhaps he was kidding, but it didn't seem like he was at the time. That I write angry. So, and I'm like, I've never been angry. This doesn't make me angry. It energizes me. The topics in the political field, I have long since developed a thick enough skin that none of this really has any effect on me. The trolls and the rest of it, you know, the implied threats and everything else, it's just sort of like, okay, whatever, you know. I go about my day, and so there's no anger there, even when it seems like there is in the writing. That's certainly not the case. And another person that I used to work with once asked me how it is I could do this. You know, how can you do this every day? How can you just wade into this garbage that is the political mud pit that we're in every day, that's just gotten deeper and wider? And I told her, I said, it's strictly a physical relationship. You know, I'm not emotionally attached to it. I mean, I am, but I'm not. I'm interested. I'm energized. I'm curious, and obviously expressive. And I try to be fun and enjoy it and make it fun for readers, and try to find an angle that maybe somebody else hasn't found, because everybody's writing about the same topics. But why would you want to read them from different people unless they could deliver them in a way that you found interesting or different? So I've always been like that, as long as I've been doing this. It doesn't make me uppity. It doesn't make me nervous. I don't get tense, and I certainly don't get resentful. I am blessed, regardless of my financial state or my medical state. I just am. I live in America. I have opportunity. No matter what happens to me, if I want to use the energy and time, I can probably get through it. So, as Dr. Lindsay says, and as Dr. Peterson says many, many times, it's about not becoming resentful. So here's the thing with the woke right. And I'll use a Bill Murray, Phil Connor reference from the movie Groundhog Day. Don't drive angry. It's that simple, right? No resentment, no bitterness. Relax, take a breath. You don't have to do yoga. I don't do yoga. I don't know. I probably couldn't do yoga. I'd probably hurt myself. But it's that resentment. It's the force, Luke. The dark side. You give in to anger. You give in to resentment. You become petty. You are allowed to be framed, or allow yourself to be framed as a victim. Okay? The only thing you're a victim of is your own mental state and how you look at the world. Okay? No matter how awful your circumstances are, no matter what people say about you, you can change those things. Human nature has given us all the tools to avoid becoming the radical left or the radical left or the radical right. You don't need to be woke, right? Don't drive angry. Don't do it. If it's starting to make you mad to the point where you're really physically feeling it, then you need to take a step back. You need to take a breath. You need to focus. You need to try to dissect whatever it is intellectually. And here's the thing. The left wants to get in your head. What I talked about earlier, what I read, the mind control, the speech control, all of that, it all starts with getting in your head and telling you what you can and can't say or how you should think. And that does include making you mad. We don't want to encourage that, and we certainly don't want to encourage it on the right. Our job is to maximize human liberty with a minimum amount of government to prevent everyone from infringing each other's rights. And you can't do that if you're pissed off. Even if you're ready to go to war, you should be clear-headed. You shouldn't be mad because you're going to make mistakes. And that's what happens. You see it online. People go online, maybe they've had a drink or two, and they start saying things on social media. And if they're high profile, they have to pretend their account was hacked when, and then they have to delete it. And you shouldn't have to do that. You should never have to remove anything that you've published, because when you wrote it, you were clear-headed and you meant what you said, and you will stand behind it. And that's kind of what we try to do at Granite Grok. We don't take things down. We don't censor people. We do need your support. We do need your help. And I'll end with that. If you like what we do, I hope you do, granitegrok.com. Don't just watch and listen. Toss us a couple bucks. We need it to keep the lights on. All right, that'll do it for this week. And we might do this again. We might not. I prefer guests. I don't like to listen to myself talk. I like to listen to other people talk. And hopefully we'll have some new guests next week, and you won't have to look at my face for 30 minutes. So thanks a lot. Have a great night. Have a great weekend, and don't drive angry. Independent media for New Hampshire, New England, the nation, and the world. GraniteGrok.com. Everything's free, but then it's not. Please feel free to support us by finding the donate button on any page at GraniteGrok.com.